Drones are transforming the solar industry, cutting cost, boosting efficiency, and making site assessments faster than ever. But how exactly does it all work? And where is the technology headed? Today, we're talking about the game changing role of drones in solar with a special guest who knows this industry inside and out. Joining me today is Chris Gellentien, the VP of Solar at Blue Falcon Aerial. Chris has an impressive background in the solar industry, having worked with the major players like Tesla and A1A Solar. He's been on the front lines of innovation, and now he's helping integrate drone technology into the solar world to make site assessments more accurate, efficient, and scalable. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Chris. Definitely thank you for the warm introduction and everything. So my background, I was in the U.S. Army. Thank you for your service as well. And my role in the Army was UAVs and drones. After I got out of the Army, I was doing a couple different odd jobs, sales, banking, stuff like that, and found that it was just not that thrilling, not that empowering as far as day-to-day kind of happiness. So when I looked into going to solar, it was helping out. It was serving, even if it was one person, one owner at a time, or one business in one community at a time, it was at least at the end of the day, helping out and serving my community. That's what really got me involved in solar to begin with.
Awesome. So you've had the chance to work with some of the biggest names in solar, right? So we talked about Tesla and A1A. So how has your experience with industry giants like them shaped your approach to solar today?
So it gave me a lot of different perspectives. With Tesla, it was a lot of fun, especially going from the Solar City days to the Tesla days, where it was not just solar, but it was the batteries and also the cars. And Tesla, it became more of the why versus the Solar City side of things, where it was much more of a mass adoption and sales approach, and just hit as many people as you can talk to and get as many people to be installed as quickly as possible. Tesla was very much the, why are you looking to do this or that or XYZ? If you're looking at a Tesla car, it only really uses electricity. Where is that electricity coming from? Well, with solar, you can produce that power during the day. And with their Tesla batteries, you can store that power for nighttime and grid down capabilities. So it was that full ecosystem. Moving down from DC to Florida, I wanted to get more involved in the solar industry more locally. And A1A Solar was the best quality solar installer here in the Jacksonville area. And I found out that the utility company was not playing fair with homeowners and business owners. So it became very important to provide accurate information to homeowners and business owners versus the status quo of just sign up everybody that has a heartbeat in a house.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I know you and I, we've worked together for a while and we have dealt with a lot of the ramifications because of that. So when it comes to like Tesla, they're known for pushing the boundaries in the tech. So is there any specific lessons or like any innovations that you saw there that are influencing what we're doing currently?
Yeah, a lot of their mentality is start with why and make it look good, make it look clean and work nice and smooth for the homeowner and cover more than what you just would normally look at for a solar install. They're just looking at the parts, the what, the how is it working and what is it doing? What Tesla really looked at is why? Why do you want to do this? What is your lifestyle? And how can we benefit your life holistically all throughout? So they focused mostly on the whole ecosystem versus just one piece of the puzzle. And that really helps with your individual homeowner or kind of commercial business owner because you're looking at their situation and you may not want to add as many solar panels as possible to go on the roof. You may want to lower their electricity usage and be more efficient before you put solar panels on their roof, which is usually the most beneficial use of their dollar versus just adding a ton of solar panels on the roof.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of what we've seen in the past is like that one size fits all solution for everybody. And I just don't think that's true. And yeah, I'm right there with you there. So, well, let's go ahead and shift gears and go into the drone specifically. So, how are drones really innovating this industry? And what are some of the big advantages that they offer compared to the traditional methods of boots on roof?
So then that's a great question, Chris.
Okay.
For the solar industry, there's a couple different characters in a homeowner or a business owner going solar. There's the initial contact with your solar sales person. There's the EPCs, the solar installers. Your EPC is your engineering procurement contractors. And then you have asset owners for large scale commercial buildings and utility scale solar plants, massive fields of solar. And then you have OEM and solar maintenance down the road. So how are drones revolutionizing each part of that industry? Very effectively. And the biggest thing is by providing more efficiency, more accuracy, and getting the job done faster. For example, in the solar sales side of things, old school way was a thumb on it. And a lot of people are going to laugh about that used to walk the edges of the house and say, okay, we can fit 15 panels up. Okay, so what is that going to do? There was no math to it. There was no science to it. It was just general guessing. Now we're at the point where we have a lot of satellite software. We have LiDAR. We have all these different technologies out there that are able to do a pretty good job, but are not real time accurate right now. A lot of times what you'll see in these newer neighborhoods that are being built is Google Maps, Near Map, or a plane flying overhead was maybe a couple years ago. And what you see right now is not what you see on the satellite image. And if you don't have the right satellite image, you have a very hard time designing a solar system that is going to be accurate and produce what you're saying it's going to produce. What drones do in the pre-installation side of things is provide the real-time data to show a 3D solar irradiance viewshed of how much solar in production you can have on each little spot of the roof and show, okay, here are some obstructions that you would want to move the solar panel here versus over top of a vent. Stuff that if you didn't know about ahead of time is going to cost you more money in go backs, in moving systems around, or potentially having to redo a permit because it's not the as built is not what was planned on the site design or the single line drawing. So those things really help just step it up to the highest accuracy on the back end. As you're installing the system, the drones can help provide that accuracy for the financing companies, for the third party ownership companies, where as an asset owner, they want to make sure that the solar system that they're paying for is producing the return on investment that they are signing off for. So large scale utilities do this. Asset managers for large commercial companies do this. It doesn't happen a lot yet in the residential or small commercial side because it isn't a high profit margin side of things for the solar installer. So the drones can definitely help in the installation side of things, the pre-install design side of things. And then also after you've had solar installed, great. You made the first step, but it's a long-term asset. It's a power plant, which is awesome. And the sun isn't going anywhere, but things break. Everything breaks. Like whoever came up with the idea that solar panels never need maintenance was a really good salesperson. And things get dirty. There's pollen. Anybody that lives anywhere near a city understands that things that go up must come down, and hail and weather and all these kind of things cause breakages and cause degradation over time. So your production from the solar system gets less and less. If it is not proactively monitored, which a lot of times for homeowners is left to you as the homeowner to watch your app and see, oh, I'm making XYZ as far as production. And sometimes the only way they see that is by 3 or 4 months of their utility bill being higher than they expect. And then they go, what's going on? And now they find out that they have a lower production throughout the summer. Well, you could be productive or proactive about that in late spring, early summer. Look for any pollen, look for any breakages, and have your OEM or your engineering and your basically maintenance companies be there for the fix right away and have your production that you were proposed from the beginning as close to perfect as possible. So does that kind of answer all those little ways that solar or that drones can be helpful in the
Yeah,
solar industry?
no. So basically, what it's telling me is that drones are essentially useless in this industry. That's basically what I'm hearing.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And
yeah, of course.
basically with the thermal drones, you
Mhm.
can see all of those imperfections. You can see it with solar panels and scanning them with a thermal drone along with the RGB or visual camera next to it. You can see inefficiencies with cells, with whole strings, with wiring down to the diodes. But then also you can see, okay, if this is an issue or a thermal difference, the RGB or the visual side can confirm, okay, this is shading from a tree or this is a breakage from hail damage. So the drones basically make that process
Yeah.
what would be handheld and take months, weeks to months of labor, take minutes
Yeah.
and be much more accurate.
No, it's quite phenomenal. I know you and I have we've had extensive conversations about these different things, and one of the things that you just brought up that's really interesting to me is the measurement and getting accurate data using the drones. And I know you and I have had many conversations lately about measurements. And one of the things I just want people to recognize is that when you are generating measurements with existing softwares, most of the time you're using either satellite imagery or you're using airplanes. Here's the deal. If that airplane is flying at 5,000 feet, you are going to get a certain level of accuracy with those photos. And this is a limitation of the GSD of those actual cameras. However, on a lot of the flight profiles that we do for these houses, we're flying at around 60 to 100 feet. It shouldn't be that unreasonable and that much of a stretch to understand if you're flying a drone that close, you can get a lot more detail, which means your measurements are going to be much more accurate. Is that safe to say?
Yes, that is
Yeah.
very simple to say. The other factor there is when the time frame. When
Yeah.
was that plane flying over your house? Because it's
Hmm.
not now. Whereas the
Exactly.
drone, it's now. So
Yep.
what it
Yeah.
is right now is the best time to see what you're going to have as far as production.
Yeah. No, exactly. I keep going back to the roofing side, but like we see this all the time, and a lot of contractors will complain because they're missing slopes or they're missing easements or they're missing like things of that capacity. It's because from that altitude, those cameras are unable to catch certain things, and so it basically gets removed entirely from those houses. So you're going to have a lot more accurate measurements if you can get better photos. And then also, I know in our shop profile, I think we do 200 to 300 photos of that roof in every different direction to generate those models. So you're going to have a lot more data that goes into the model generation, which means ultimately it's more accurate. So yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff you can do here. And you brought up the thermal, checking the thermal side of it to make sure all the diodes and things are actually working correctly. Gosh, it's wild to me, all the potential that drones can bring in. So yeah, so let's keep moving on though. But so once a solar provider decides to use drones, one of the biggest benefits is optimizing the panel placement, right? So how do drones help determine the best placement for solar panels to actually maximize the efficiency?
Maxifies. I like that. That is definitely
Maximize.
very
What did I
maximize.
say? Did I say maxifies? You know, I'm going to
Yeah.
stick with that. I like that. Maxifies. How do you maximize the efficiency? I love it.
Yes. So basically, with drones taking 300 photos instead of just one satellite straight down or tilted angle image, we are able to produce a 3D copy of your house and the surroundings. Okay. So what we're looking at is not just a dirt plot that hasn't been built out yet, or a roof that just has the paper protecting and not the shingles yet because you're halfway through building. I've seen
Mhm.
that. What are the problems there? Vents, obstructions, things in the way, not even knowing what the roof shape looks like if you are just looking at a plot of dirt. Okay. So the accuracy of how you're doing that design really comes into play when you have the most up to date and detailed imagery, both say satellite and drone imagery, because then you can see, okay, I should probably put the solar panels here, 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 and avoid the vent that is here, here, and here, as well as each jurisdiction, AHJ, authority having jurisdiction, when you go to do your permits, is going to tell you that you have to have certain offsets from either the bottom or the ridges or the top for fire, basically having the ability for safety and letting the firefighters get up onto the top of the roof. So each jurisdiction's a little bit different, and being able to make sure that you have the proper measurements helps provide you an accurate design when you go, okay, we can do 12 panels on the top and 8 panels on the second row, but you mismeasured, and now you can only fit 10 panels on the bottom row and 6 panels on the side. Well, now you got to go talk to the customer and go, hey, we screwed up. Why'd you screw up? Well, we didn't do our job right or whatever. Well, now that's moving the panel over to the other side or somewhere else. If it's a different azimuth facing, if that one side was facing south and the other two sides of your house are facing east and west, those panels are going to, on the east and west, are going to produce less than the panels on the south. Another way that the drones can help here is with obstructions and shading. You have vents, and you want to make sure that you're moving the panels around so that you're not covering the vents. But then you also have satellite dishes, chimneys, trees, just general stuff in the way of the sun hitting your roof, like your neighbor's house. That might be 2 stories and you have 1 story. Okay. Or I don't know, up north, not in Florida, we have up in north, they have mountains. So if you're on the north side of a mountain, you're not getting as much sun as the other side of the mountain. So the drones allow us to do the 3D map and view shed to provide an animation of where the sun is going to be from January to December, from morning to evening, and show how the sun and the shade is going to go over your house. So say you got your house, you just built this brand new house, awesome, and you want to have some shade in the yard and some awesomeness as far as nature. Well, where do you put those trees? Do you put them on the north side of the house? Do you put them on the south side of the house? If they're already there, what effect do they do with the shading of your roof? And avoid the panels, placing panels that are going to be completely shaded by trees and obstructions, and maximize the production by using this view shed of where all the sun is really hot and where the sun is really not, to make the best designs and production proposals for your customers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What are like specific factors you're looking for to determine if a site is actually a good candidate for solar? So, what are like the key qualities that you're looking for?
A lot of times, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, a lot of the key points that we look for is, one, you have to own your roof. So if you have an apartment complex, multiple dwelling unit, you don't own your roof. Unfortunately, right now, the solar technology is just getting into balcony placed solar. It doesn't really offset your utility usage yet. But if you own your roof and you have plenty of room to install solar panels, for example, a solar panel is typically 4 foot by 6 foot, unless you go with a solar shingle, which there are definitely really nice ones coming out. Those solar panels, 4 foot by 6 foot, only fit on certain roof styles. If you have a ton of different angles and dormers and shapes and customizations in your roof, it makes it very difficult for you to fit big rectangular solar panels on your roof. Also, the type of roof. Your best type is going to be standing seam metal roofs, asphalt shingles. The other types of metal roofs are usable, but we like to not have any penetration. So that's where the standing seam metal roof works, and some tile roofs also. We try to stay away from any like clay or slate tile because they end up being very brittle, but in some markets that works. Most of the time, the roof structure, making sure that it can handle a 40-pound panel. Like if you're comfortable with standing on your roof, most likely you have a roof that is structurally sound enough for solar placement. We also look for the vents and any obstructions, trees in the near surroundings of your house and your neighbor's houses, as far as where is it going to cause shading and issues as far as pollen. And then the other side of things, as far as what determines how many panels you need or how many panels you can use on your house, is going to be the amount of circuits available in your main electric panel, the size of your main electric panel as far as amperage, so that you go along with NEC code, National Electric codes, and your usage. The main point of what you're trying to do with solar is provide yourself the electricity that you make and use right now, versus being dependent and renting electricity from the powers that be, the grid.
And when it comes to the powers that be, that's one of the things I'm really surprised I didn't mention yet is the local legislation and restrictions. You want to talk a little about that as far as the mass variations between different jurisdictions?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So when I moved down here to Florida in 2019, I found out the hard way that the local utility company has changed their net metering rules. What does that mean? Basically, like gross accounting and net accounting. The meter that you have on your house right now just goes forwards. If you're not using power, it stops. The net meter also goes backwards. So during the day, your solar system produces power on a curve based off of how much solar you have and how sunny it is versus cloudy. That curve is different than your usage of electricity. So there will be times where you're making more power than you're using. Where does that electricity go? Typically, with net metering or NEM1, the old school way, it was a fair credit of 1 kilowatt hour, 1 unit of electricity goes out to the grid, and they sell it to your neighbor for full price. And you get a little credit. And then later, when you need electricity, nighttime, cloudy days, stuff like that, you can use that credit without having at full value for that electricity, a kilowatt hour of electricity. What the local utility company did here was change to a net metering 2.0 because they are community owned and not for profit. What they have done has switched the exported cost. Basically, if you're making excess energy to the fuel rate, which is a fraction of the cost of the entire levelized cost of electricity. So if you're getting electricity from the utility company, it's $1. But if you're giving electricity to the utility company, they're giving you 25 cents on the dollar.
Wow.
So it's not fair. And
Yeah.
California has been going this way. Arizona, the utility companies have been pushing against solar customers that have already had solar installed. And the reason being is a lot of misinformation. The utility companies don't want to lose control. And what they're saying is that the more people that do solar in a community, the people that have not gone solar, that are still grid connected, have to bear the weight of all of the extra costs and fees. And those people that have gone solar aren't paying their fair cost. I've never seen that with any other kind of industry here in the United States. And so those kind of concepts are where the utility companies are pushing back against homeowners and people actually owning their own systems versus renting power from them. And that has caused a lot of mistrust in the industry. That has caused a lot of return on investment for people that used to have net metering 1.0. Now going solar isn't as easy. Now you have to look at more of the return on investment, battery storage, keeping the energy at the house versus pushing it out to the grid. So
Yeah.
everything is changing and is dynamic.
Yeah, I know that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that's also really interesting to me is like, it's not just broken down by states or counties. It's like, and you can explain a lot better than I can, but like, it's really different neighborhoods may have different policies. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. And it's very
Yeah.
difficult to see where the lines are. For example, here where I live, there is a very thin stretch of land in Nassau County where we have FP&L, and the island has a different utility company, but those two utility companies have one-to-one net metering. But then for the next 60 miles is Jacksonville, Florida, and their utility company is everything of Jacksonville, but you don't know where the utility company ends. Where the utility company ends on my side is the difference between a river or a creek. The difference on the south side of the town or city is a specific road. So if you're on one side of the road, the north side of the road, you have JEA. If you're on the south side of the road, you have FPNL. But that's just one portion of it. That's the utility company. You have to get an interconnection agreement through, meaning going back and forth, being interconnected between your power plant, the solar system, and their power plant, the grid. Okay. The other side is your building departments, the authorities having jurisdiction. Your building department, you have to get a building permit to do solar, to get a shed, to do anything on your house. Okay. Solar is one of those things where each jurisdiction has different rules. Like I said earlier, the fire setbacks are not consistent across the country. The way that solar systems are connected to the grid is not consistent around the country. And how easily you can add battery storage to a solar PV system and where you have to put that battery or how many bullards or fire suppressant things changes with every jurisdiction. So in Jacksonville, there's 4 or 5 different jurisdictions inside of that utility company. So there's 2 different permits that you have to go to many different agencies. And if you don't understand the differences in each of these jurisdictions, the person that is providing you that proposal as the homeowner, if they don't understand that, they may not be giving you the accurate information.
It's people are put into agreements that it may not have been in the best interest for them. Is that fair to say? Like, yeah, a lot of times that happens.
I
So
would say it's not a lot. Hopefully it's not a lot, but there's way too many times here in Florida. There's way too many times around the country where the sales side of the industry has taken advantage of the homeowner or the property owner. And I have done the analysis on some of those systems where they promised XYZ, they promised the world for this person, and it wasn't delivered. What was delivered was underperforming and wasn't matching what their actual usage was. What happened was the solar salesperson went in and said, instead of you using 300, say, kilowatt hours of electricity or $300 of electricity, it was $187, slightly different. So the average was lower and he could propose a smaller system by 1/3 to do the same kind of offset that everybody else was saying would take 22 more panels. So their system was
got it.
cheaper, but had the same offset.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
So okay, and then that brings up a good point. So if you are doing a proper analysis using the drone data, right, you can be armed with data and empower those homeowners to let them know, like, hey, you're making the right decision, and we did our homework. We're not just doing your thumb tests, like you mentioned before, right?
Right. And it's all about the data
Yeah.
that you input into the system gives
Mhm.
you the results and the proposal, the return on investment, all the analytics is all based off of the details. And if you step on the details, if you're putting garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. Okay. So a lot of times people like to not necessarily the property owner, but the person that's across the table wants to take the easy way out. And I can make this easier by saying XYZ cut in the corner. That's not beneficial to anybody. In the long run, it's going to come back and bite the salesperson in the butt.
I
And
was about to
that's
say it's going to
even
work for a
person.
while, right? It works for a while at least, but it's going to come back and ultimately burn you.
Uh-huh.
So if you're going to do it the
Sure.
right way, you got to make sure you do it all the steps involved,
Right.
which is of course capturing the highest quality data, using the right software, and doing those extra steps. And I mean, just doing it right. Like,
Right. Because
yeah,
at the end of the day, this is a 30-year power plant. It's not just a vacuum that we're going door to door and selling.
yeah, this is a large
Exactly.
investment for these homeowners. Like, I just think that for the amount of dollars that these homeowners are putting into it, like actually doing it right, like measuring twice, cutting once, right? Like
Yeah.
measure it correctly the first time, make sure you get the right information, make all the right decisions, and then do the proper installation and make it correct for that specific homeowner. And I would imagine, and I don't have, I personally, you might, but I don't have any data showcasing. But I would imagine if you can show your proof of work when you go to those proposals, you're probably going to stand out compared to someone who is doing the thumb test. Makes sense to you?
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was going to say. As
Yeah.
far as the benefit for the homeowner, for the front end of the solar industry is prove it. Awesome. We got some great technology out there with LiDAR, with satellite imagery and all this other stuff. But if it's not up to date, if it's not current and you're not putting in the right information as far as the ethics of your sales team and the advocates for the customer,
Yeah.
then you're going to be misrepresenting what the homeowner gets.
I think as a homeowner, you also, it needs to be an industry standard that you require these certain steps before you agree to an installation. It's one of those things, back in the day, I mean, before like Carfax and Kelly Blue Book came around, there wasn't really much of a checking and balancing in place, right? But now it's just expected. Every dealership you go to, you get a Carfax, or you go through Kelly Blue Book and you check your pricing. That this should just be an expected thing. And I believe if we educate the consumer and let them know that this technology does exist, the industry is going to essentially require this. The consumer is going to require this as part of the process. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And the reason being is because there are so many times where the property owner, the homeowner, the business owner goes out there and gets burnt by roofer number one or solar company number two. And that pain point in the industry catches up to
Yeah.
eventually. And the industry is going to the homeowners, the property owners are going to go, hey, I get what you're saying looks really great, but prove it, because we've seen all of these problems so far, and we want to make sure that what you're saying is actually going to be accurate and what is installed. So a lot of that education is needed in the industry because it's such a new industry, maybe 1, 2 decades as far as commercially viable. We're still in that catch up phase as far as regulation, as far as jurisdictions, as far as customer abuse being reported and legislated on, as far as the attorney generals going after the bad companies that are installing solar or selling solar contracts and then never installing them. Though if I was a homeowner and I've been there, I have solar on my roof. When I was going through the process, I wanted to make sure that I did the due diligence to vet the company that is going to be installing the solar system on my roof, and that what they said is accurate and they're going to back it up for the long term, not just for installation day, but for the 30 years that they're saying that this solar system is going to do what they
Yeah.
say it's going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. So let's talk about the adoption side for where we're at currently. So we are seeing drone adoption across many industries. I know telecommunications was one that I came from, and also the surveying side, architecture, engineering, obviously real estate photography, critical infrastructure, oil and gas, yada, yada, yada. Like the industry is rapidly advancing with more and more drones being utilized and adopted. Now, let's talk about the solar industry. Where are we at today, and where do you see as the biggest opportunity for growth?
That's actually a really good question. So yeah,
Okay.
drones are being utilized a little bit in solar. I would definitely say infrared thermal drones are being, even some plane assets, as far as I know FPNL is using the imagery, is very, very prevalent in the large scale, the utility scale and commercial solar systems, because those asset owners, the owners of the big fields of solar are investment firms, are investors. They want to make sure that their long-term investment is continuously producing the results and the return on their investment that they were shown to begin with. So utilizing drones versus the old school way, which with big solar fields, you would have to, if it wasn't with a drone or an aerial asset, there would be somebody going around to each bank of string of panels, doing a electroluminescence testing, basically making sure that the system is working when there is sun out there. Okay. Or a IV curve, basically seeing the watts and the voltages on the curve of the electricity, and also going around with a handheld thermal camera to every single panel, make sure that they're all working. A drone or a UAV asset can do what would be weeks or months of work by a team in minutes. So the biggest side of this is the thermal UAV drones taking a lot of images, thermal and visual, of those solar systems and looking for differences in thermal temperatures along the array and matching the anomalies as far as strings being out, bunch of solar panels at once, one panel being out, or just one little set of cells in that solar panel, or even down to just one cell is broken, or the wire between the cell on the front side and the cell on the back side, but brings the power to the next cell. All of those little issues can cause thermal heating differences. Using a drone can maximize the efficiency in scanning an entire field of solar or an entire roof of Walmart or an IKEA or a Target distribution center that has thousands of panels. Doing so allows you to see the power production over time. It's not so much in the smaller scale, like commercial PV and residential homeowners solar systems right now. Why? Because as they were being sold to the homeowners, they were sold at the best profit margins, the lowest cost. Everybody was worried about, okay, what's the cost for the solar system? What's my return on investment? Not how well is it going to be taken care of and who's taking care of it and who's monitoring it. That wasn't a big point. What they were really talking about was solar makes X amount of power, and this amount of power is going to reduce your electric bills by this amount of dollars. Awesome. But is it going to work forever? This should be 30 years. You don't have to clean them. Now we're finding 5, 10, 15 years later, pollen actually blocks the sun and is sticky. A solar panel that's broken doesn't make as much power. So because the asset owners are now the commercial property owner or the homeowner, it's on them to make that a demand on the front end of their decision making of who they go with for solar, or make sure that if they haven't gotten that done, add that to their system so that they have that maintenance, that monitoring, and the long-term taking care of their solar system. There are service companies that are coming out now that there is a demand to repair, replace, and monitor solar systems and make sure that they're doing exactly what was proposed when it was installed years ago. So there is a massive opportunity for service and to ensure that your power plant is operating as it was proposed for the full lifespan of your solar system.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think there's a lot to dive in on here. So the first thing I want to talk about is the actual company themselves. A lot of these guys did like a slash and burn method of capture. And then we saw this, and basically they would go through and they would just sell as many as possible. And I would say, I don't know what the numbers are. You probably know better than I do. 70-80% of those companies don't longer exist. Is that fair?
I would definitely say more than that.
Okay.
I would
All
say
right.
if a solar company is older than 5 years, it's surprising, but
Surprising.
that's part of that's a result of how they're built. And then going through markets and slamming on doors and making like pushing solar, like, hey, you got to go solar, isn't the greatest way to do solar as
Yeah.
far as quality. It may be very big on quantity, but with a lot of quantity also comes a lot of problems if it's not done right. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is that it wasn't, a lot of people have focused on getting as many people to sign up as possible, not on the back end of, okay, how do we take care of what we installed?
Yeah. And I think a lot of homeowners are recognizing the first time they have a problem and they pull out that sheet they got from the sales guy 3 years ago. And now the company line goes to some people in India or something, like there's no actual proper way. They're like, wait, what is this? I don't know what's going on. What do I do now? And they're basically just like, what do you do now? Good luck. Right. So I think there's a whole lot of opportunity in the solar servicing and maintenance side. I know, I've had a lot of conversations about that. So yeah, ton of opportunities. Now, the other thing as well is you brought this up, and it's actually a really good point. And we saw this in surveying. And this is actually the reason why I left surveying. I'm not sure if you guys know this or not, but my company, Blue Falcon Aerial, we are actually the adjunct instructors at Francis Tuttle for a mapping class that is specifically designed for the surveying industry. And it's a 5-week course. It's very in-depth, but there's a really good reason why we are no longer focusing on that market. Because what ended up happening were there were 2 types of survey firms: the ones who adopted drones early and the ones who didn't. And the ones who adopted drones early, there were the only ones who really had the ability at now to actually do those large acreage captures. And just like you were talking about the wide variance and like the amount of efficiency and time savings and cost savings that drones provided, same exact thing in surveying, right? So to give context, it takes 2 surveying crews 2 weeks to do a mile by mile area in densely forested area. It takes a LiDAR drone about 2 hours. Okay. Like it's just a little bit, right? Just a little bit of detail, right? And so
It's a
you're
little
talking about
different.
all the liability, all the manpower, all the additional equipment. Like all this. Like there's so much things that go into this. And so, I mean, we were saving these surveying firms 20, 30, 40, $50,000 for every mile we were capturing. And it was absurd. We are going to see this shift in the roofing and solar side, right? And that's really our focus, is roofing and solar. But we are actively going out there and really trying to force this adoption shift into this industry, these two industries, because there's just so much opportunity. And to me, I see the exact same thing that we saw in surveying 5 years ago. It was the exact same way. People were stubborn, and and you would have those conversations, and they were like, "Oh, I don't really, not a huge rush. We'll look into it in like 3 years." And then all of a sudden, the adoption happens, and then all these surveying firms are then scrambling, trying to build up a program. But the guys who were in early and actually adopting early, they had the first mover advantage, and they were already had it in their processes, and everybody else playing catch up.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Very much to the beginning of what we were talking about. It goes to why,
yeah,
and really is going to come down to the homeowner, the
mhm,
property owner,
yep,
caring about why are they doing this system? Why are they looking at a new roof? And
mhm,
what matters most to them? Are they looking at it to be the cheapest thing on the planet? Okay, well then some guy's going to knock on your door. Yeah. But if you don't want some cheap stuff up on your roof, and you'll have to buy again in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, or you're going to have a massive hole replaced because it wasn't done by somebody that understands what they're doing. Those are things that can be high cost down the road.
yeah,
But everybody so far, from what I've seen in the last 10 years with solar, is the industry is very much about pushing it out to the homeowners in a mass appeal. And homeowners have been very, very focused on cost, savings, make it as cheap as possible. Well, that costs more in the long run versus having it taken care of as a whole, done the right way the first time, and done by a highly qualified and educated, trained,
mhm,
and certified expert. There are those experts in both roofing and in solar. And a lot of times putting those two things together and allowing them to work synergistically for maintenance and long-term care for your roof and for solar, you have that one place to turn to. Well, that's where I see a lot of these two industries going in the next 5 to 10 years, is a lot of those long-term companies that are focused on the caring for their homeowners and clients, and putting the homeowners priorities first versus the dollar. They're the ones that are going to last the longest, because they will have the upfront customer base. They will be in the market for the right reasons, the why, and they're going to be there for the long term and service the customer and make sure what they do does what they said it's going to do.
yeah. And the thing about this as well is, like, and I'm not sure if you are, but I certainly am not even saying that using drones and this technology, I'm not even saying it's more expensive. What I will say is it's uncomfortable. It's different, but it's not like I'm not even going to say it's more expensive. It's just something that is not standard, but it takes that innovative leadership to really push that bar and say, what else can we do differently? And we get caught up so much in the roofing, especially roofing, but I know solar is the same way as well. We get so caught up in this is how it's always been done, right? That
Right.
is the mentality we see way too often. And it's just like, we can sit there and show them all the highest quality imagery and all the everything and all the new AI software and all the 3D modeling and thermal imaging and yada, yada, yada. And we're like, do you not see this? And they're like, yeah, this is really cool. We're not going to do it, but it's really cool. I'm like, what? Like, I can't even understand, but this is so incredibly common. And it just takes that, it takes those, it's the early adopters. You have to have those early adopters that see it. And they're the innovators. They're the guys who want to be on the cutting edge, and they want to be the leading dominant people in their markets. And that's what we're doing. So like Chris and I, obviously we work together all the time, and like we are looking for those innovative leaders who are out there trying to stay on the cutting edge and really just put the foot on the gas and push. And a lot of times, like, we are told you're too expensive.
A lot of times when talking to specifically as far as thermal drones and drones in general with a solar installer,
Hmm.
their process is pretty well oiled. It changes all the time as far as the solar industry. So they got to be pretty fluid and have a solid process. And I get it. But I've always looked at the industry like there's a better way. And adding drones to your process may have incremental little costs, but the overall savings and added profit margins that you have are tenfold because you're not going back two, three times. You're going to have a much more accurate plan set and design, and you're going to be ahead of the curve, literally, both on the electrical side and on the maintenance side of taking care of your customers for the long term. And solar has always been looked at as a single point of sale. Not a lot of people come back. No, there's a lot of people that are now returning to solar companies going, hey, can I add more panels? Hey, can I add a battery? Hey,
Agree. Yep.
I'll do smart panels or smart home stuff or energy
Mhm.
efficiency. So having this in front of a solar installer is positioning it in more of we're on the same side of where you're coming from. There is a better way to do the process and you make more money. We're trying to do the same thing, but we're not
Mhm.
trying to be the scary guy going, hey, you got to buy, and maybe you'll make something that then it makes it, oh God, this is a scary thing. I don't know about this.
Yeah.
But if it's a better way to do the same process, you to make more money and get more people on board, quality and accuracy negates the quantity.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the other thing to think about as well. Like, put yourself in the eyes of a homeowner. Okay. If you're able to show them a full 3D model of their house with all of these solar radiance fusion and everything else, and you're able to show with data and showcase where the sun goes over their house and all of that, like, I don't think it's that unreasonable to just make the connection. Your close rates should be a little bit higher, right? Like you can make that leap, and that should be able to offset any incremental adjustments in your costs. Like it just, I don't know. It's something that's always been a lot of conversation that Chris and I have had, but like it's there. Like it just makes sense for people, and it's just a
It's
lot of
also
people get too
proven.
caught up on like what is it going to cost instead of what is it going to bring to my company, right?
Exactly.
Value
Yeah,
added versus the cost. So,
exactly. And I've seen that many, many times. And I've actually done that testing on my side and with a bunch of different solar companies where having that other little value differential puts you ahead of the status quo. Who is the status quo in the solar company, solar industry? It's all those people knocking on your doors, all those people that you see on Facebook and all this other stuff. But if you're the local expert that knows exactly what that area needs and is focused on the homeowner and the property owner first versus trying to make a dollar because they understand in the long term if they keep selling bad systems, they're not going to keep selling systems in that area. So
yeah.
overall, they're going to end up with more people turning to them, referring their neighbors and their buddies and everybody else to them, which makes their cost of acquisition so much less than trying to have teams and teams of solar door knockers and Facebook ads and all of this other stuff that's out there that has been trash for the market.
Cheapest marketing you can do is referrals, right? That is the most cost effective is people who recommend their friends, family, neighbor because they had a good experience. And this is a great way to start that process of providing that high quality service.
Exactly.
All right. So yeah, all right. So we've already sort of talked about this, but let's see if there's anything else you want to add here. Are there any other like what are the biggest challenges preventing more solar companies from adopting drone technology?
So yeah, we did kind of touch on this a little bit before, as I
Hmm.
alluded to. I've observed a lot of issues over the last 10 plus years in the solar industry. Many of the companies being focused on mass adoption and their sales tactics being more of a slash and burn, get into a market, hit heavy, get as many people to sign up and installed as quickly as possible because the longer you do that, the more that costs and your profit margins go down over time. And door knocking and those kind of marketing tactics tend to not be very highly liked over time. So your numbers your percentages go down. The other side of it is you have a section of the solar industry that is the nationwide remote solar bros. The one thing I'm going to say about that is why pay extra for a middleman versus the actual installer? And if you're going through this middleman in BFE, middle of the country, and you live somewhere else, and they say it's going to make XYZ, but there's a local jurisdictional issue, who are you calling? Are you calling that guy, or are you calling the installer that, who's the installer? That's a great question. So time and time again, I've seen that where the sales orgs pop up, they mow through markets, disappear, leaving those people that do install 5, 7, 10 years down the road going, my inverter broke, or one of my micro inverters broke. Who do I call? They're not in business anymore. Who do I go to? So then they're considered orphans. The fact that there's a term in the industry of orphan solar customers because
Wow.
their installers are out of business. All right. That is a huge issue in the market right now. Trust. Secondly, if not most or more importantly, is the big utility companies. You don't have to go solar. There's no need for it right now because you have electricity. The nice thing is it costs less when the sun is free and you own your own solar system. But big utility companies don't want you to know that. And secondly, they're throwing their weight, their big dollar amounts in their pockets as far as marketing and misinformation to say that, all your neighbors and buddies that have gone solar, they're actually hurting you. They're costing you more money. Why? Because the whole market, the whole neighborhood, the grid, we built this to say that it's going to have X amount of people. And if there's 100 solar people, that means you got to pay for their share. What the utility companies aren't saying is that there are also 5,000 new homes being built and being added to the grid. So it's a red herring as far as making the media chase something that doesn't really add up. But basically, the utility companies are saying that they're going to have to, it's going to cost them more for them to get other people electricity because you as a homeowner have solar on your house. I don't think that's 100% accurate. And there's a reason why they do this as far as their business model is not for solar installs. So a lot of these utility companies have used this information to go to the power utilities commissions in each state. Florida, Arizona, California are big ones to look at as far as the changes. Texas is an open utility, so there are changes there. There's a lot of states that are pushing against solar because the powers that be have control of the power, not necessarily the electrical power. But what they're doing is they're going to the utility commissions and saying, hey, it's not fair for us to have to pay 1-to-1 and a fair net metering. We should pay 20 cents or 30 cents on the dollar. Overall, they're making hand over fist in profits either. And it's a lot of smoke and mirrors for the homeowner, the business owner, the property owner to not make any benefit out of owning their own system.
Interesting. What do you see drones doing as far as any sort of evolutions in the solar industry over the next 5 years?
So, 5 years is a long time. Obviously, we've just gotten out of pandemic and all that kind of stuff. And now we're into a whole new administration timeframe. So who knows? But drones are getting better, smaller, better capabilities, smaller platforms, cheaper costs, more prolific across the market as far as the country. There are more pilots every day that are getting their pilot's license, Part 107s. So I would say in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see a lot more adoption in drones for solar sales and pre-installation verification. What do I mean by that? Okay, so there is right now satellite imagery and plane imagery, LiDAR that they can use to do proposals for solar. Drones add another level to accuracy, both on the 3D measurements and time. When was the satellite image or the plane image taken versus the drones were taken now? It's a now photo. So you know that it's most up to date. So utilizing drones to give you the best placement for the solar panels for production and to avoid obstructions like vents and chimneys and issues. Okay. And to make sure that you don't have to go back and install a solar panel that you said was going to be here to somewhere else because the measurements were wrong. I also see that the long term after installation, having drones being very prolific will bring that kind of analytics down to the masses. Instead of it being a massive solar system that is the only thing being analyzed for production over time, I think that drones will bring those kind of analytics and software innovations to help the production, maximize their production over time and limit their downtime, their issues with maintenance, and be proactive about that to not just the large scale companies, but also the small scale commercial buildings and residential homeowners. I would also say they're going to be very prolific in the solar servicing industry and helping that kind of industry prove that they need an RMA or a replacement from the manufacturer because this is the part that's broken and not some other part that they may say is broken.
That makes sense. I like it. I know us, the Blue Falcon, we're doing a lot of things to help accelerate that. Talked about doing like the residential and commercial, the smaller scale things. Like right now, if I remember correctly, we have somewhere around 500 drone pilots in our existing network. So like we're trying to build out that system to essentially allow that inspection on demand, right?
Right.
These are things that we already are doing in the roofing side. We haven't done much yet with solar, but like we have had extensive conversations about this on the things that we're planning on doing. So I think there's tons of opportunity, and we're trying to really make it to where individual homeowners or property managers or smaller companies or even larger companies, we have some companies that literally operate nationwide. We are fulfilling contracts right now across states all across the country.
I think this is an industry that is definitely on the forefront of expanding, and
Yeah.
it's also an opportunity for a lot of those people that have been in the solar industry that go, hey, who's taking care of this? Same thing with the electric vehicles right now. Like you have a lot of mechanics that take care of your normal car. Who takes care of electric vehicle cars? I have actually heard a radio ad for a company that will take care of Lucid and Rivian and Tesla, and it's now being a thing. I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. But 5 years ago, not a thing. Same thing here. I feel like in the next couple of years, this is going to be a huge opportunity for those in the solar industry that know solar panels, electricity and how everything is taken care of to jump on board and be part of that network of solar servicing companies. How many solar servicing companies have you ever heard of?
I don't know. I mean, none, I
That's
guess.
a
I don't
huge
know. Yeah.
opportunity.
For companies that may be intrigued by drone technology, but they haven't actually made that leap yet. So like, what advice would you give them if they want to start incorporating drones into their operations?
Check us out on YouTube, the Blue Falcon Aerial website. Give us a call, set up a meeting. We love to talk and we're nerds. So we will definitely provide way more information than you're asking for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just Chris is one of those guys that he reached out to me and he was like, dude, I have an idea. Let's roll. Right. So like he loves this stuff. He's very passionate. And I know he'd love to talk your ear off about anything that has to do with solar. So yeah, if you are interested, you want to learn more about what this looks like, please reach out. We'd love to have the conversation with you. But yeah, man, I really do appreciate you jumping on the channel. I know we'll be doing a lot more in the future. And this is something that's a lot of opportunities. And we know this, like we are fully aware. And I am really excited to see the same shift that we saw in telecommunications and surveying. It's going to happen in this industry. And you have two options. You can either be on the leading edge of this shift, or you can be drug along by the collar because everybody else is forcing it. I mean, either way, it's happening. So like, it's up to you when you want to start doing it.
Yeah, change is
It is.
inevitable. And
Yeah.
the value and the quality is going to be demanded by the industry, by the clientele. So if you're not about it, change is going to come one way or the other.
Go do something else, I guess, because this is happening, right? So
Hey, that's what we're saying.
Yeah. Start seeing if you're ready to retire and move on and go off to something else, because this is happening. I just can't stress it enough. I mean, we can avoid that as much as we want, but like it's coming, guys.
The
So
biggest thing is we got to stop focusing on the sales person's pocket. We got to focus on the homeowner and the business owner and make sure that our client is taken care of, not just now, not just in 5 years, but for the long term.
yeah.
And that's our biggest why, is making sure that our client is the first and foremost why, and go to that, basically make sure that we are putting them first versus our
This
client.
this industry has a very bad reputation for a lot of very good reasons, and so it's about time to start doing some things to help fix that. So yeah, all right. Well, it's been a pleasure, and I will talk to you soon. See you, my friend.
Definitely. Peace.